So I'm going to focus on one specific part of the air pollution problem that John talked about, and really we're looking at the production of particles from burning solid fuels, and of course this is mainly in residential areas. It's a project called Sapphire, and details are actually on our website, which has lots of other information, as John said, about our research activities. I'm going to take it back to the 1980s. This is Dublin, 1980s, and Ireland, and especially Dublin, was in the news, not for good reasons, because Dublin had a series of serious winter smogs in the 1980s. And this was, of course, due to the burning of bituminous coal, which was the main heating source in the winter months. And we even had ridiculous situations where people were wearing gas masks to go to buy more coal to put on their fire, you know. So it was a very serious situation. It made international news for all the wrong reasons. And quite rightly, there were some health effects that were quite seriously identified. And this is some data from Luke Clancy, who did lots of research in the area. And this was from the Dublin Smog event of 1982. We have some information here from January. And what we have here is we have levels of black smoke. So this is the soot particles that John was talking about. And they basically have a trace here that's measured by Dublin City Council. We can see a big spike here due to black smoke. And the result was that we have a large increase in the number of deaths in one Dublin hospital as a result of that. So this smog event actually had quite an impact on health. And it was measured by the number of deaths recorded in a hospital in Dublin. And the conditions really here were cold weather, temperature inversion, low wind speeds. So this means that pollutants that emitted couldn't disperse away. And we had very high levels of black smoke and sulfur dioxide. So the emissions from coal burning were really trapped in the atmosphere. The number of deaths per day doubled during the smog event and remained high for days afterwards. Okay. As a result of that, there was quite a considerable amount of pressure to make a change, and the ban on bituminous coal or smoky coal was brought in on the 1st of September 1990. And here we have the results or the impact of that introduction of the ban. We have levels of black smoke and sulfur dioxide. Just look at black smoke for a minute. This is the sooty particles. And what we have here is you have these kind of oscillating pattern. This is winter, right? At the top here and summer down the bottom. So we're having the peak levels of black smoke during the winter months, obviously. And this is the 1980s when we look at the year. And this dotted line is when the ban on smoky coal was introduced. And we get an immediate effect. Immediately, the levels of black smoke that were recorded in Dublin city centre were much, much lower. There was also a reduction in sulfur dioxide as well. In fact, the reduction in black smoke was 70%. So the ban on smoky coal had a great impact on air quality. And later, after many years of research and compiling data, it was shown that in fact, when you looked at the medical data that was accumulated in the 1990s after the ban, what we see is that there's 116 fewer respiratory deaths and 243 fewer cardiovascular deaths per year. So that's a huge impact. So there's no doubt that the ban on smoky coal had a very positive impact on air quality and, of course, on health. Let's come forward to 2015, all right? And, well, over the years, what has happened is that the smoky coal ban has been extended not just from Dublin. Of course, it was introduced in Cork, introduced in Limerick and Galway. And in fact, what we have now is we have pockets of populated centres around the country where the ban is in place, okay? If you go outside of those areas, all of the green, okay, then you might see something like this. So I live in Macroom. Macroom is outside of the smoky coal ban area, and you can see this on a cold winter's night if you just go up just above the town. This is about 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, okay. And this is a recognised problem. The EPA recognises that this is a problem themselves, and this is contained in their air quality reports. They identify that the burning of coal and solid fuel in small towns is a serious air quality problem. And naturally, people like the Asthma Society are advocating for a ban on smoky coal, And obviously that's why we're here today, is to put forward the Clean Air campaign. It's a little bit complicated though, because we know that we don't just burn smoky coal. I mean, some of us might burn smokeless coal, and for hundreds of years we've burnt peat and turf, and more fashionably now we're burning a lot more wood. Okay, so the burn of solid fuels in Ireland is actually quite a complex situation. It's not just simply coal, and that is the reason why we're performing the Sapphire Project. It's a 3-year project funded by the Irish EPA. The details of the project are on our website here as well. Okay. But the focus is on looking at particles produced from solid fuel burning in residential areas. And the idea is that we can make some measurements in areas that are going to be affected. So we wanted to make sure that we chose very special locations to monitor it. And the idea is that we should monitor it in towns that are outside of the smoky coal band, so not in the red or the blue areas. And the ones that are outside the smoky coal band are towns with a population less than 15,000. Ideally, also, they should have no natural gas supply, because that would result in a high usage of solid fuel for home heating. Okay. And we've got 3 candidate towns. The first is actually Killarney, which is just under the 15,000 population, and it's not on the gas grid. Neither is Enniscorthy in County Wexford, and neither is Birr. So we went to Killarney about this time last year. We spent a month making measurements there. We then went to Enniscorthy in January and February 2015, and now, at this moment, we're actually in Birr in County Offaly. I'm just going to present some results for Killarney here, and we were actually on the west side of the town. We were located in a residential area. You can see the houses here, obviously, and this is the local community hospital, and we parked up here with a van and a container containing all our instruments. We stayed there for about 5 weeks. Owen, who's here in the audience, is a local man, so he could live at home with his mother and get married for a few weeks. But he was working hard trying to keep all these instruments running, and we monitored continuously air pollution there for about 5 weeks. And here is a chart which shows some of the measurements. So this is going through from the middle of November through to more or less Christmas time. And what we've got is the amount of this pollutant that John was talking about, PM 2.5. These are small invisible particles that are breathed into the lungs. And what we see is that the amount is about 10 here on the scale, so we're bobbing along here. Okay? But what we've got, of course, are these huge spikes that go up. Huge spikes here. And in fact, some of these spikes are about 10 times higher than the background level. So during the day, we're actually measuring background levels of pollution, which is very small. It's almost natural levels, only very small contributions. But at night, we're getting spikes of pollution, which are 10 times higher. Here we look at a 24-hour cycle now. Okay, so we're just looking at every hour of the day. This is the night, 6, 7, 8 a.m. in the morning. You see we might have a little bump here for traffic, 8, 9, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. That drops away, and then we kick in about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 o'clock. We peak here with this huge concentration, and then we drop away. So we've got a very strong diurnal profile, and what this is that we have basically a huge contribution here from solid fuel burning in the evening hours. And for a whole 6 hours at least, the concentration is 10 times higher than it would be during the day. And this is relevant information. Why? Because it means that if you were to average out these concentrations over the day, or even over the year, they wouldn't necessarily be reported as being that high. And you shouldn't get pollution in Killarney. It's a small town, 50 kilometres from the Atlantic Ocean. You've got winds whistling in, dispersing pollutants. You shouldn't be polluted. Well, obviously you do when you have lots of solid fuel burning going on. And it's important for people to know what time of day the pollution is occurring at, not the average daily concentration. If you're an asthmatic and you wanted to know what time would be best to go for a walk, well, it wouldn't be 8 o'clock at night when there's the most pollution. Okay? And this sort of information is not currently available. What we're able to do is, for sure, is to make sure that we connect that measured mass with the type of particles that make up that mass, okay? And the way we do that is with a very fancy research instrument called an aerosol time-of-flight mass spectrometer. And what it does, it measures the chemical composition of the particles. And it does this continuously. So we get real-time information of not just the amount of particles, but what's in them, the chemical composition. And what we use is a fingerprint to identify the particles and their source. And what we do is we get a fingerprint for peat burning, we get a fingerprint for coal burning, and we get a fingerprint for wood burning. So we're measuring the particles all the time, but we can separate them out by their slightly different chemical composition, their chemical fingerprint. And this allows us to count not just the overall number of particles, but those ones due to peat, the amount due to wood, the amount due to coal burning. And when we do that, this is the sort of 24-hour profile that we get. We can now strip away from the mass and say, right, the brown ones are due to peat burning. The green ones are due to wood burning. These grey ones due to coal. These yellow ones here from amines and ammonia a bit due to agricultural emissions that have stuck to sooty particles from fuel burning. So the link with agricultural emissions is strong. But basically, what do we see? We see peat, coal and wood being the dominant contributors. And when we put all that data together to work out how much is from the different source, we see that 30% of all those particles are from peat, 26 from wood, 18 from coal, and these agricultural emissions combining actually with sooty emissions. We're getting 77% of all the particles produced in Killarney are from solid fuel burning. If we didn't have any solid fuel burning, we'd have clean air. Simple as that. So just to bring it into a summary and also put in a few words about that, residential solid fuel burning contributes to 70% of the fine particles in Killarney. When we went to Enniscorthy, we got very similar results. About 70 or 80% was due to solid fuel burning. We're actually in Burr at the moment. Last night was a nice cold night, okay, and there was a quite serious amount of pollution, very similar again. So we think that this pattern is going on across all the small towns in Ireland where there's a very extensive solid fuel burning. And there are literally 50, 60, 70 of those towns. Okay. When you add up that population, that's a lot of the country. Yeah. Of course, the proposed nationwide ban on smoking coal was mentioned by the Minister in the end of September. And what do we think about that? Well, we think it's a very important and good first step. But our research shows it's not just coal that contributes. Peat burning and wood burning also contribute as well. So if everybody was to switch from coal to smokeless coal or low smoke coal, you might get an improvement. But if people were to burn wood or peat instead, you're not necessarily going to get the improvement you might expect. So although the smoky coal ban is a first step, we shouldn't stop there. We should work on improving that further. And whether that's an improved gas network or a move away from open fireplace burning. We all know that burning an open fireplace is not very efficient. 70% of the heat goes up the chimney. It also produces a lot more pollution than burning in a stove or in a technology, a cleaner burn technology. I mean, ultimately, in 20 or 30 years, we're going to have to move towards much cleaner sources of fuel, like renewables, wind energy, and so on. In the meantime, I think that we may need to consider some of these other steps as well. And the message that I want to send to you is that burning clean is good for the environment, but it's also good for health. Okay, thank you.